y'all hung in there with me tonight. I know it's late on the East Coast. I know it's late in the Central. It's getting late in the West Coast. But we've got some business to handle, family. My apologies for getting to you so late. I was fooling around in the YouTube space trying to go live there, and it just was not working. So I had to come through the Be Live to reach you, family. Let me know if you see me in the chat. I'm going to give y'all a few minutes to file in while I pull up this incredible document that actually puts our demands out there to the White House, Congress, the President. Everybody's about to get it. Okay? I need you to share this video. Help me make it go viral, family. We got to talk about the Black descendants of American chattel slavery and the demands we've got since they chose to leave us out of this stimulus, family. Come on, start your watch parties. Fall on in. Let's get it, let's go. Hey. Share, family. Get everybody in the building, okay? Everybody. It's time to get it in, family. We got lots to talk about. Let me know you see me and you can hear me in the chat. They should be streaming live on YouTube. Come on, family. I'm going to let the music play out while I pull up my document. It's all over Facebook. We're going hard in the paint, exclusively for the Black descendants of American chattel slavery. That's who this is for. The gate is up. Yeah, come on. I'm looking for my document, family, the final version. Give me a second. I had everything ready to go, and we all know how that goes, right? 148,000 Black Americans dead from COVID-19 by Christmas. This is Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Friends of ADOS TV channel, bringing you those ADOS hot topics. Today's coverage is of an extraordinary letter compiled by some extraordinary people from the Concerned Black American Citizens, which is an advocacy arm for ADOS. We refer to ourselves as Black descendants of American chattel slavery because it puts the gate up around what we specifically are owed. Now, this exchange tonight is not about reparations. This exchange is about our demands for a stimulus worthy of us. Because as we can see, we were totally left out of that stimulus. I don't know if you saw or read today where the governor of California has earmarked $125 million for illegal immigrants. I don't know if you heard that all the money for the small businesses, I think it was $348 billion, is now zero, and nobody's sharing whether or not, what percentage of that went to ADOS. Yeah, so this letter is going out, like I said, to the president, to all of Congress, to all of the press, and we're intending to make this go viral, and we will be circulating a petition because another stimulus will be coming out, and we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that we are included in that stimulus. This letter starts, and you can find it in Medium or on my Facebook feed. 448,000 Black Americans dead from COVID-19 by Christmas. So I'm going to read the letter and do my commentary in between. Concerned Black American Citizens calls for $2.4 trillion in COVID-19 relief for Black descendants of American chattel slavery. Like I mentioned prior, we are referring to ourselves as that because it's much more specific. I don't know if you've seen where white folks are now trying to claim to be American descendants of slavery. They're calling their indentured servitude slavery, which we all know it is not anything like the chattel slavery we endured. So we put the gate up by putting Black and chattel in the title. No shade to ADOS. We are an advocacy arm for the ADOS, and we support their efforts. Concerned Black American Citizens, otherwise known as CBAC, calls for $2.4 trillion in COVID-19 relief for Black descendants of American chattel slavery. Scientists have determined that the COVID-19 virus infects humans indiscriminately. On a call April 9th with the Congressional Black Caucus, Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton stated that over 1.4 million Americans would die by Christmas. However, as the death toll continues to rise, the coronavirus has clearly identified the most vulnerable among us as its most perfect host. Black descendants of American chattel slavery, otherwise known as Bdoacs, aka Negro, aka Coloreds, aka African Americans, aka Black Americans. While Black Americans represent 13% of those living in places releasing data by race, they have suffered 32% of the COVID-19 deaths in those places. Full stop. That is a conservative estimate. I have seen anywhere from 40 to 70% in the states that are actually reporting. And most of the states will not tell us the number of Bdoacs, ADOS, that have been impacted by the COVID that have died from the COVID. So 32% is a conservative number. Based on that data, Concerned Black American Citizens and ADOS Family Interest Group estimates that 32% or 448,000 Black Americans could be at risk of dying from coronavirus by Christmas. Conservatively, almost 500,000 wiped out from the COVID by Christmas is the estimate. Indeed, historically specific circumstances have created the poverty experienced by Black America, and the health outcomes reflect these facts. That Black Americans are dying at exponentially higher rates from coronavirus is definitive proof of the compounding effects of pre-existing health and generational poverty in the Black community. The root of their existence, the racial wealth and income gap created by slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, mass incarceration, and job discrimination. The infection and death rates are evidence of the specific devastation and harm resulting from structural and systemic anti-Black racism against the descendants of enslaved African Americans. Quote, African Americans in particular are more likely to suffer from health problems that are some of the main triggers for COVID hospitalization, including asthma, diabetes, and obesity. On each one of those health conditions, African Americans are above the national average by a percentage point or more, and farther above the numbers for white, non-Hispanic Americans. That was NBC News on 4/12/2020, end quote. Exacerbating this financial health crisis is misinformation about the disease, lack of priority testing, unequal medical care, inability to practice social distancing, and even exclusion from the CARES Act. Full stop. I don't know about you guys, but I can't even reach unemployment insurance. They're telling me as a 1099 independent contractor, they don't have a way to check on my income, and that they are too understaffed out here in California to make a call to my employer to find out what my earnings were so they can assess my unemployment insurance amount. Now, this is problematic, as I'm sure it's been for many of you that are struggling to get through to your unemployment insurance divisions, because the federal stimulus, $600 additional on top of your base support, is tied to the state. So look at the ways in which we've been set up through gig jobs and 1099 contracts, where we cannot even claim easily and effortlessly the unemployment that is due us and the additional $600 stimulus on top of that. That would place me at about $1,050 per week. And why is that problematic, family? Because my mortgage company will give me a forbearance until June, but they want all 4 months in June. Now, if you are on house arrest, okay, you can't be out in these streets. You're not supposed to be out in these streets. You're under stay-at-home orders. How in the world are you supposed to raise 4 months of mortgage or rent? I'll continue. Further, Concerned Black American Citizens rejects Surgeon General Jerome Adams' recent admonishment that the African American community step up and stay away from alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. Full stop. We're not the only ones that consume alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. This is more of that benign neglect that the government often does to us as ADOS people, right? They sit up here and some kind of way manage to flip the script and make it our fault. We're not the only ones consuming alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. So for him to point to that as a reason to make us more prone and susceptible to the COVID, albeit I do agree that we need to get our health together. We need to get our diets together. But why are these people so willing to deal with effect and not cause? You ever think about that? They don't want to deal with cause, family, because that would mean making us whole and admitting that they have made us the legs of the table that everybody else eats from in the country our ancestors built with their lives. All of the wealth you see in this country is because of our ancestors' heinous free chattel slave labor, the worst of its kind in all of the born world. And yet we are on the bottom and dying at higher, disproportionate rates than everyone else from the COVID. Moving on. Sadly, each of these vices are made readily accessible in Black communities nationwide. Just like the weed shops that they're putting out, that's me, full stop. All the weed dispensaries are in our neighborhoods for white folks to own and come purchase, while our brothers are on lockdown for these nonviolent offenses. The state turns a profit. Moving on. There were no calls to eat fresh produce, to exercise, or pledge to eliminate food deserts. There were no promises of priority testing or mass N95 mass distribution. Stop right there, full stop. Angela NIRVANA speaking. Do you know what they were doing to our people when we showed up at the beginning of having symptoms for COVID? Lots of folks in New York, all over the YouTube, talking about how they were sent home and told not to return to the hospitals until they could not breathe. Moving on. There was no announcement of a targeted informational campaign, full stop. Why was Waka Flocka and these crazy ADOS out here talking this nonsense that we could not catch the COVID? From all groups, Africans, Caribbean, ADOS, talking foolishness about us not being prone or susceptible to the COVID. Now we're number one. There was no assurances. As with the 1980s crack epidemic, Black Americans are now being scapegoated for bringing death to their own communities from foreign lands they have never set foot upon. Let that sink in. Racial hatred and discrimination are the root causes of the generational poverty, amplifying of the impact of the coronavirus on the Black community. Decades of the Democratic Party's benign neglect policy and the Republican Party's Southern strategy has allowed this country to fail paying its debt of land inheritance, legalized redlining into overly crowded, environmentally hazardous food deserts with poor transportation and no hospitals. Stop right there. I repeat, our reparations claim is separate. That's around 17 trillion, according to Dr. Darity, Duke professor, lead economist for the ADOS movement at large. 17 trillion over multi-generations. We're asking for demanding an immediate 2.4 trillion for COVID stimulus, specifically for Black descendants of American chattel slavery. I just need to be clear that we're still beating the drum of reparations, but it's separate and apart from this demand. Because guess what, family? All the other groups are making their demands. Hispanic Caucus is making its demand. Everybody is making its demand. But somehow it's problematic when ADOS makes demands and puts the gate up around what we're owed and what we're due. But you know us. We don't pay that, no, never mind. Moving on. The disparity of resource allocation in Black versus white communities is stark. Full stop. I've already shared with you on prior shows that out of 107 trillion household dollars, white folks share $100 trillion. Black folks, which is comprised of 90% ADOS, 10% Black immigrants, share $300 trillion. And of that $300 trillion, 90%, which is ADOS, share 700 billion. Black immigrants, which are 10%, share 2.3 trillion. Now, there are exceptions on both sides, but the bottom line is ADOS is on the bottom in the country their ancestors built with their lives. That's how stark that is. Moving on. This means we will suffer disproportionately from the negative financial consequences associated with having scant resources while bearing the greatest risk to our health by leaving our homes. Infections will also result in death more often in the Black community due to our overrepresentation among hourly workforce where we get no paid sick leave nor adequate or affordable health care coverage. Full stop. True story. No matter how much education you have, no matter how much job experience you have, being ADOS makes you a contagion to wealth in this country. I have been growing through it since 2009 after Obama bailed out Wall Street. I managed to start turning it around and now got hit with COVID. I am now out here doing Instacart because my bills are still making demands of me and no one is answering the phone at the unemployment insurance office. Now, how can I keep myself safe? I do wear my mask and gloves everywhere I go, but how do I stay at home? This is exactly what that speaks to, that we still have to be out here pushing because otherwise we'll be amongst the 50% of homeless families in this country if we don't keep going. Let me go back and start that paragraph over. Infections will also result in death more often in the Black community due to our overrepresentation among hourly workforce where we get no paid sick leave nor adequate or affordable health care coverage. Let me go back to the affordable health care coverage. Show of hands, how many of you guys can afford Obamacare? ADOS can't afford Obamacare, work and get jobs, which he allowed on his watch. Uber blew up on Obama's watch. I know that's hard for you guys to hear because some of you worship Obama, but he is a part of the problem. The Democrats are a part of the problem. I said it. We have been their mules for almost 60 years, and we are on the bottom. Do you need any other evidence than that? Many of us lost the only wealth we had, our homes, under Obama. Mine was spared, but I'm in the fight yet again to save my home. So I can't stay at home, and there's a lot of ADOS in the same position that cannot stay at home because unemployment isn't answering the phone. The online applications aren't working. The federal stimulus can't come through because it's attached to the state. The state is talking nonsense out here in California to give $125 million to illegal immigrants, undocumented workers. That's my tax dollars, your tax dollars, if you're out here in California. And all the money for small businesses is gone, $348 billion. And nobody can tell me how many ADOS benefited from that. Ain't seen the stats for that. Who can afford to stay home? We are caught between a rock and a hard place, playing Russian roulette with our lives out here because no one's hiring. Sean Hill was on my show last Saturday, and he talked about LinkedIn. Look up Sean Hill on Facebook. He's got a website, increasemychecks.net, where he talks about how you can get in on the LinkedIn and do your thing. But if you need immediate cash, look into Instacart. It pays really well, especially when you're very respectful to your clients, okay? Use your professionalism and make it happen, family. And pray over yourself and your comings and goings, and wear your mask and gloves at all times. But we don't have a choice, family. Otherwise, they take our homes, right? They take everything. This is a second money grab for all of it. They're coming for what they left on the board from the Obama bailouts. They're coming for it. Don't you believe them when they say they're going to tack it on the back end? Don't believe them, family. Pay as much as you can so that you're not faced with foreclosure at the end of this. Who knows when it's going to be ending, right? Moving on. We are largely employed in front-facing essential positions where social distancing, one of the primary protections against the virus, is reserved for the privileged and not the Black American essential worker. Our position at the bottom of the economic ladder dictates this dilemma. Further, in the aftermath of Obama's Great Recession, Black American home ownership collapsed, destroying generations of accumulated wealth and inheritance. There is little cushion left to soften the blow of a fatal pandemic. Here, at the beginning of the pandemic, already 50% of the homeless are Black descendants of American chattel slavery. Repairing a specific harm done to a specific group, Black descendants of American chattel slavery. When the Civil War ended, almost 3,000 white slaveholders were paid reparations of $300 for every slave they emancipated. Beneficiaries of this windfall include Senate Majority Leader and multimillionaire Mitch McConnell. Meanwhile, ex-slaves were freed into poverty, sickness, hunger, homelessness, and abuse by the U.S. government. Full stop. This is what makes us susceptible to the COVID. Not Twinkies, not Church's chicken. What I just read you has set us up for COVID to make its home in our bodies and wreak havoc. The U.S. government's failure to pay it to its debt of 40 acres and a mule to emancipated slaves led to over 1 million deaths of newly freed slaves from starvation, smallpox, and cholera from 1862 to 1870. Generational poverty has been accumulating in Black America since 1619 and continues to deepen. Sadly, in 2020, the Black community is faced again with a similar loss of life and financial devastation from COVID-19. So, it is with great urgency and obligation that concerned Black American citizens calls for $2.4 trillion emergency Black descendant of American chattel slave relief plan, slavery, as in the institution, relief plan, that will enable the Black community to sustain and defend itself from hunger, homelessness, sickness, joblessness, and racial lineage discrimination. COVID-19 Emergency Bdoacs Relief Plan. Number one, immediate guaranteed funding of an emergency Bdoacs COVID-19 relief plan in the amount of $2.4 trillion directly payable to non-immigrant Black American, aka African American, aka Black American, aka Negro, and be subject to a 24 months review. I keep referring to Negro because Obama took that out. And that is directly tied to the 14th Amendment, which is directly tied to our reparations. A, eligible recipients should be compensated $6,000 per month tax-free. B, Social Security recipients should be compensated an additional $2,000 per month tax-free. This is for a year, and then we'll review it. C, Black veterans should be compensated an additional $5,000 per month tax-free, given discriminatory practices of the VA, in addition to supplemental health care and mental health counseling. D, minor children should receive $500 per month each, tax-free. Eligibility: you must be a non-immigrant, Black American, who is identified as colored, Black, African American, Negro on federal documents for the last 12 years. Number 2, Medicare health insurance coverage and supplemental health care for Black veterans. Number 3, guaranteed grants versus forgivable loans of up to $25,000 or 2 times business sales for the trailing 18-month period for micro businesses and sole proprietorships with no employee or collateral restrictions. Full stop. This is what they cut us out of with that small business solution of $348 billion. So we're making it up in this particular stimulus demand. 4, increase funding for halfway houses, shelters for ex-offenders, and housing for the homeless. 5, government subsidized 1% interest mortgage recapitalizations. 6, funding state mortgage down payment and rent assistance programs to reduce mortgage and rental rates at market levels from financial year 2000. 7, ex-offenders, regardless of legal status or criminal record, shall be eligible for all relief programs, grants, and loans described herein or in the future and are not to be excluded in any way. Ex-offenders also imprisoned under the 1994 Joe Biden crime bill for marijuana possession should be compensated a minimum of $50,000 for each year that has been served. 8, emergency funding for K through 12 educational support in the form of computer and internet access, year-round supplemental support such as tutoring and social services. 9, no federal taxes shall be assessed on any relief measures described herein, nor should any of these relief measures be garnished for payment of back child support or payment to loans or creditors, even in the case of the financial institution listed for direct deposit. 10, plumbing infrastructure shall be repaired if possible or replaced in Bdoacs communities to ensure basic public health and sanitation needs are met. It is important to note the distinction between Black descendants of American chattel slavery and immigrants. Black immigrants did not arrive in America in significant numbers until after the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 was passed, and then primarily as students. The 1980s are when the Black immigrant population grew from over 800,000 to over 3.7 million today, with a median household wealth of $60,000 compared to $200 for Native Black American. They are more highly educated than Bdoacs and able to access affirmative action. They benefit along with other majority minorities. Excuse me. White women and people of color or choice at the expense of whom the entitlements were meant. Median household wealth of Black descendants of American chattel slavery is expected to fall to zero by 2053 as the slavery wealth gap continues to widen and now stands at 20 to 1. However, the arrival of the coronavirus has fast-forwarded that event to 2021. Full stop. Coronavirus has fast-forwarded that event to right now. We have no wealth. Do you have any wealth to leave your kids? We don't have any wealth. We need to stop these lies. 90% of us share 700 billion, and we've been wiped out by the COVID. 22 million unemployment insurance claims were filed to date and growing. What percentage do you bet that Black descendants of American chattel slavery are amongst the highest of the unemployed? And do you think those jobs will be there for us once the COVID crisis has ended? I don't think so. You better hurry up and learn how to become your own economy. Moreover, most of our households have already reached that bottom. Meanwhile, the median white household wealth at the bottom 20% of the income distribution is greater than the median household wealth of the entire population of Black Americans descended from chattel slavery. According to Moody's Analytics, 80 million jobs will be affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and many jobs won't come back, especially in customer-facing service jobs such as hotel and leisure, retail and fast food service industries, where Bdoacs are overrepresented relative to other demographics. Black unemployment has been consistently and persistently higher than all other demographics, even before the COVID-19 pandemic took hold. According to concerned Black American citizens, it is imperative that a plan be put in place immediately so that Black descendants of American chattel slavery can survive, regain health, feed their families, buy homes, start businesses, and receive their rights of full citizenship as determined by the 13th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. With that said, family, this is the last portion of it where I'm going to give you our post-COVID demands. Nobody's talking about ADOS and how it relates in a post-COVID way. Well, we've got a demand for that. Post-COVID-19 Bdoacs extension plan. Eligibility. Participants must be non-immigrant, Black American, who can identify one set of grandparents on the 1870 United States Census, and A, must have identified as colored, Negro, Black, African American on federal documents 12 years prior to the onset of post-COVID-19 Bdoacs extension plan. B, immigration records can be used as a cross-reference to verify eligibility. Number 2, continuation of COVID-19 emergency Bdoacs relief plan, direct payments through 2031. I said it. Continuation of COVID-19 emergency Bdoacs relief plan, direct payments through 2031. Full medical coverage, Bdoacs, no premium or copays. Federal job guarantee, which guarantee employment to all eligible able-bodied Bdoacs. All employment would be compensated commensurate with training and experience and carry full benefits, federal employee benefits. Educational program designed to incentivize and train Bdoacs in the medical field as doctors, nurse practitioners, mental health counselors, and midwives. Community health centers with Bdoacs staff, community food pantries with Bdoacs staff, fully fund United States Postal Service with Bdoacs staff. Right now, the post offices out here in California are dominated by Hispanics and Asians. You rarely, if ever, see anyone Black working in the post office. Reestablish and narrow the definition of affirmative action by restoring its original purpose to set aside educational, job, and business opportunities for a group that has suffered discrimination based specifically on Bdoacs lineage, not race or sex. Required that all colleges and universities that are designated as historically Black colleges and universities have a study body representative of 50% or more of Native Black Americans, no less than 15% of Black Americans represented in each department, and an administration representative of the percentage of Black American population of the city for which it resides. Establish a new government agency to administer the federal jobs programs and other social services to the Bdoacs community comprised of the Bdoacs. We need to be in charge of what we're due. Free public and private vocational, technical, undergraduate, graduate, doctorate education with guaranteed positions in their chosen professions. Number 9, ensure that no less than 15% of construction or public work contracts go to Black-owned construction companies that comprise of 50% or more employees that are Native-born Black Americans. Banks, particularly those found to be legacy beneficiaries of the institution of slavery, shall be required to lend to Bdoacs for home ownership and business loans. Banks will be required to provide semi-annual audit reports demonstrating equal access to capital. Any bank selling predatory loans will have to repay the excess interest earned and restitution for any financial harm caused by said loan. Number 11, 1% interest student and business loans. 12% of the total RFP contract dollar values on all federal, state, and municipal RFPs and contract bids must hire, engage Bdoacs at a rate equal to the percentage of state or local population, whichever is greater, or a minimum share of 30% of local, state, and federal. 13, enact legislation making price gouging and fraud of Bdoacs a federal hate crime. 14, establishing Bdoacs as a protected class with all violent crimes against us being deemed as a federal hate crime. 15, immediately release all nonviolent criminals or persons convicted of victimless crimes that reside in private, local, state, and federal jails and penitentiaries. Re-enfranchisement of all Bdoacs regardless of financial status. 16, forgiveness of all fines, fees, penalties, bails, and warrants for nonviolent, victimless crimes and minor drug offenses. 17, ban the box on job and housing applications to prevent discrimination against the formerly incarcerated. The last post-COVID demand, formerly incarcerated and the incarcerated shall not be excluded from any part of the extension plan. I'm in the home stretch, family. The circumstances of our poverty are specific to our shared lineage as the descendants of American chattel slaves. The institution of slavery, redlining, Jim Crow laws, lynching, state-sanctioned terrorism, mass incarceration, the 94 Omnibus Crime Bill, exclusion from federal programs, land grants, the New Deal, GI Bill, Farm Aid, and full participation in capitalism have decimated the Bdoacs community. There is no immigrant group, legal or illegal, nor religious group that has suffered on any level or to the extent of 401 years of ongoing abuse, degradation, asset theft, and oppression as have Black American descendants of chattel slavery. No other group in America was kidnapped, bought and sold by its own government and its fellow white citizens. No other group in America was forced into chattel slave labor to build the foundation and infrastructure of the wealthiest nation in modern history, only to be deprived of legal compensation and inheritance. These facts explain why the heirs, Black descendants of American chattel slavery, Bdoacs, live in the third world conditions that have made them specifically susceptible to death from the coronavirus, and why immediate action is required. Make this go viral, family. Share it with everyone. Urban Game Changers, American Descendants of Chattel Slavery, American Descendants of Slavery, ADOS, ADOCS, FBA, Black Family First. Every group should get this and make it go viral within their groups. This is for the nation. I know there's other initiatives out here working on local repair, but this is for the nation, and we are escalating this. If you have direct contacts within the CBC or the government, anybody in Congress, look me up under Friends of ADOS TV in Facebook and send me a message. You can also find me at Angela Nirvana. And I will put the information in the proper hands so that this can go further and wider than ever. Our goal is to get this in front of the most important decision makers before the ink even hits the paper. We are at DEFCON 4, family. The stakes are exceptionally high because the stakes are us. Thank you for tuning in. You make it a beautiful God-inspired rest of your evening. Peace, family.